There's new research that helps you figure out a way to get through a breakup. And I thought this is actually quite fascinating. So I thought we'd talk about this. The deal is pretty simple, right? Breaking up is never easy, as I said, but this new research does give you some, if you will, some guides here as to what to do. Let's try to find out more. Serenna Corsini-Munt is a associate professor of clinical psychology at the University of Ottawa, which is where this study comes from. She's on the line. Thanks so much for being here this afternoon. Let me begin by asking, because you actually have, it's one thing to say it's hard to do, we're going to make it easier, but you actually have a process to follow here. You have something called being autonomy supportive. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for talking about this. So we study autonomy support in our lab, and I'm going to explain what that is. So my graduate student, Erin McClung, really wanted to see how this works in breakups, because we look at it inside of relationships all the time. And so autonomy is it's a basic psychological need, right? It's our ability, our capacity to make our own choices, right? And autonomy support is when someone recognizes our environment or people around us, they recognize our ability to do that, right? And so we see autonomy support in all sorts of relationships, and we see all sorts of good things with it, right? We see it in romantic relationships. We see it with parent and child relationships. We see it with teacher and student relationships, and it brings a lot of great things like a sense of vitality and motivation. And so Erin, my student, was wondering, well, is it so great that it could even help with a breakup? And so that's what she tested. We, in the sense that we set out a survey and we asked people to participate and that had had a breakup in the last 12 months. And we had them answer some questions about their breakup and then tell us how they were feeling. And what we found is that when people reported that the person doing the breaking up, so whether you were the person doing the breaking up or the person getting broken up with, when that person initiating the breakup gave more autonomy support, so recognized the other person's ability to make choices and just kind of, was honest with them, we saw higher sense of vitality and more positive mood. So those are some of the associations we found. So
let me ask a dumb question, because breakups are never an easy time, right? And there's always going to be some angst or some animosity, whatever.
Of course.
For people who up until now prefer not to get involved, because if you know you're going to be breaking up with someone, it almost seems like counterintuitive to tell them all the things that you did not like or that were wrong in a relationship, given you're not going to be with them anymore.
Yeah, so the idea that the headline is really like no games, right? So I don't know if you have to make an exhaustive list, right? But the way we saw it, the way autonomy support can work in this context is, providing an honest or, non-controlling rationale for the reason for breaking up. So it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, as I said, but really allowing the other person time to process in their own way and taking the time to be kind of non-judgmental about the response. So autonomy support isn't like blanket support, right? It's really just this idea of supporting that the other person is going to have their own reaction and being respectful of that.
Well, what if the other person's not interested in dealing with that as part of the breakup?
And the other person might not. And so from an autonomy supportive perspective, that would be part of, respecting that, right? So maybe they don't want to hear it all, or maybe they don't want to go over everything. But just this idea, what we're seeing is that it was harder for people who didn't know why there was a breakup or who didn't understand or left kind of wondering.
When you said you had sent out a survey, what did the survey ask people about breakups?
We had them talk to us about a whole bunch of things. So we talked about how long the relationship had been. We asked them about how long since the breakup, whether or not they got broken up with in person or they broke up with their partner in person or virtually. And we asked them about depression, anxiety, the sense of vitality thing that I mentioned, which is that sense of feeling alive, and their mood, whether it was positive or negative.
And what about this other part, which I'm also curious about? Once the deed is done, if you will, right? And people split. If you've had this sort of autonomous explanation, whoever you happen to be in the relationship, does this suggest that, down the road you can still maintain a relationship, still talk to each other, like have ongoing contact or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say our sample, we're a little bit limited in what we can determine. Our sample's a really young sample. We have a largely university sample, average age 19. So we're talking about dating relationships here.
Okay.
And what we did find, though, in our sample, when people reported ongoing contact, they ended up also there was an association with higher anxiety and depression. Now that could mean that maybe that ongoing contact was creating some sense of like false hope or ambivalence or confusion. So from our data set, we wouldn't be able to say whether or not friendship can be maintained successfully or not. But I think that's a really great question.
We're never going to know exactly how this works because it seems to me that, every person reacts differently, always has, always will, which kind of begs the question how much research it can actually tell us. I mean, if you're looking to this as a guide, and I appreciate this idea of being autonomy, supportive, it's great to say it as a theory. Do you actually, see people sitting down and say, I read somewhere that if I do this, things will be better as we break up?
I think, and you're hitting the nail on the head with this idea of like how much can we know from research and different samples, and what is it going to tell us? I think the overarching conclusion of ours, this idea about no games and just being honest and respecting that the other person is also a person. I think that's like the take-home message that I would hope someone could take from this, even if it's not, because it's not all situations where you're going to even feel comfortable being autonomy supportive, and there are lots of different circumstances. So I think if we can, grain of salt it down to taking at least that small piece home with it, then I think that could be helpful to some people.
Now, I wonder, too, if you don't mind me asking, outside of this, the clinical approach here, I have no idea how old you are. Have you ever been through a breakup?
I've been through a few, but not in a while.
and do you remember how they went?
I do remember how they went, and there's one where I don't think I really gave a great reason, and I still think about it still.
Oh.
And so I do think, and my student, the one who launched this project, is in a different stage of life, so I think she's testing this information a lot more than I am these days, but I do think that it is important, I think, to be clear and to have given the other person an opportunity to react as well.
I find this fascinating only because, and I ask you, from a personal point of view, not as someone, who's a researcher here. You just said that you think now, having been through this on more than one occasion, you're the one who didn't provide a complete explanation, right? So this is you having made the decision as opposed to the other person making it for you.
Yes, and we found that in the data because we had people from whether they were breaking up and they gave autonomy support or whether they were receiving autonomy support from the person making the decision about the breakup. And the associations were the same. They both had that the association with higher, more positive mood and higher vitality.
Okay.
So I think it is, we assume that the person making the decision might not be going through as much or might not have as much kind of grief to do, but I think they do too sometimes.
Well, like someone has to take that first step, right? It's not going to happen at exactly the same time for both people, which is part of the rest of the issue here, right?
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing in some new data that we're looking at where people are talking about knowing when it's over. And so some of people are talking about like how they could tell their partner knew or they knew before their partner, right? And so we're hopefully going to get some of that data out there for people to consider.
Oh, that'd be great. I look forward to that. So basically what you're saying is the idea, my excuse of, this isn't working out is not good enough.
Well, I don't know. Say that one more time for me.
I say in a relationship, this is not working out, and that's the end of the conversation, and we're done, and we break up.
Well, yeah, I think you want to give with our data, the suggestion is to maybe a
little bit more,
give a bit more opportunity, and essentially a non-controlling and not a gamified kind of answer. Just. That's the idea.
Yeah, it's over when it's over doesn't cut it. I get it. Okay. Listen, I thank you very much for the time. I'm looking forward to the next round of research that you do here. We can chat again.
Great. That'd be great.
Thank you
Thanks
so much. Take care. All right, there you go. You know what? It's just one of those things. You can have all the research in the world, as I said. I'm not sure that it makes it any better, easier for anybody. And frankly, I'm not even sure that idea that the person you're breaking up with wants to know. Maybe yes, I don't know.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio, hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them. It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Everybody